Hello, good evening, Wakefield. I'm calling this meeting into order of December 12th, 2022. And we have a studio full of guests today. I'm asking everyone who's in high school if you could stand and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance before we begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great, thank you. And I'm joined today by all my colleagues, so all 7 of us are here for attendance. And before we continue, I do want to introduce who we have here in our studio. So, Athletic Director Brendan Kent, do you mind coming up? Sure. And introducing the 3 spectacular teams that we have here?
Absolutely. Thanks for having us tonight. We have 3 unbelievable teams here today. Really super accomplished, some of the best seasons in Wakefield High School history. So first we have our football team. They went undefeated 13-0 this year. Super Bowl state champs and best record in Wakefield High School history, which is awesome.
Can you introduce who's here?
Absolutely.
And could you come and join behind Brendan if you wouldn't mind?
We get head coach John Rafferty, New England Patriots Coach of the Year.
Yeah.
Captains Nathan Delgado, Christian Delgado, Ian Dixon, and Javen Willis. I don't know if you want these guys to say a few words or.
Trophy.
What do you guys got? And you guys want to say a word? I don't know if they're prepared.
That's okay. Would you mind just introducing yourself, telling us what year you're at, and what was the coolest thing about playing at Gillette?
I'm Christian Delgado. I'm a senior in high school. The best thing about playing at Gillette, it was like, I don't know, when we walked on the field, it didn't seem real. Like all the lights were like lit up, and it was just like very cool. I don't know. It was awesome.
I'm Nathan Delgado. I play running back and outside linebacker. I'm a senior, and also walking onto the field, it felt surreal. It was a crazy moment.
Hello, I'm Ian Dixon, senior, and the best part of playing at Gillette was the beginning and the end. Just coming out with that win was just the best feeling ever. So.
I'm Javen Willis. I'm a senior. My favorite thing about playing at Gillette was running out of the tunnel and just looking up and seeing like all the banners, and it was just real cool.
Thank you.
Awesome.
And then and then Coach of the Year. Would you like to say anything?
Good evening. John Rafferty, head football coach at Wakefield High School. And probably one striking moment, for myself, and for my team, is that we came onto the field, the tremendous amount of support that was there for us, from the Wakefield community, school, residents, and it was tremendous. It was really striking, really was.
So I don't know if any more questions for football before we move on to the next team. Or yes.
I just want to say something. I was at that game, which was so fun. It was so exciting. And it brought me back to high school when my high school team went to the state champ, but it was not played at Gillette Stadium, so super cool. But I was just so impressed by everybody in the stands. The students represented us very well, too.
Yeah.
I thought the fans were, the students, just the behavior of everybody was just, it was so exciting being there, and everyone made us proud.
I actually plan on writing a letter to the Kraft Foundation this week because they made it so inclusive, not just for our football team, but our dance team who's here tonight got to perform, our cheer team got to perform, our band, and even our TV production students got to broadcast the game from the Patriots Media Center, which was just such a cool, such a cool experience for really so many different student groups in our school. So it was awesome.
Yeah, it was great.
Awesome.
we'll probably have questions at the end, but we
Yes.
can move on to the
Yeah,
next
absolutely. And
amazing team.
our next team, cross country. So they won back-to-back 2021 and this year 2022 all-state championships. And that was the first time in Wakefield High School history that we've ever won back-to-back all-state championships. The last time Wakefield had won an all-state championship was 1972. So quite a long time coming, and just an amazing, amazing accomplishment. Head coach Perry Pappas. And our captains Leith Jones, Ben Stratton, and Matt McCoy. You guys come up. We'll give it to Leith to start us off.
My name is Leith Jones. I'm a senior and horseman. I think it's supposed to say.
What was
Any
your
special
favorite
moment?
part of the season, I guess? Yeah.
It was probably just towards the end where it really sunk in. That was my last year with these guys. I mean, I can't imagine having a better season with anyone else. These guys are really special.
I'm Matthew McCoy. It was just a wonderful year all around, spending it with these teammates. You know, we really grew close as like the year went on, and you know, really felt like a family bond by the time that championship rolled around.
My name is Ben Stratton. I'm also a senior. I just thought it was pretty cool. Just like you build sort of a community over the last 4 years running. So being on a team and getting to finish off the season running and winning all states was a really fun experience just to finish off those last 4 years.
And then, Coach, do you want to add anything? Yeah.
Yeah, it's just we're very lucky that the kids make it a great environment for everybody on the team to come to practice every single day. It makes them really want to work hard, and that's kind of the culture that they've helped develop. And you know, I think that the best part of the season was, you know, we kind of knew we had a little bit of a shot, although Burlington had beat us 4 times in the season. And you know, it was a little bit different from last year, where I think we were expected to win, and to see them find out that they won, you know, it was pretty amazing. So it was a great memory.
Thank you.
And our final team here tonight, our dance team. So they actually had to correct me. I said they're back-to-back state finalists, so second place in states 2 years in a row, 2021 and 2022. It was actually back-to-back-to-back 3 years in a row. Yeah, state finalists. So an amazing run for the dance team. They earned a bid to nationals, and they did so well that they got invited down to Florida later this month. They're going to perform at the Disney World Christmas Parade, the Orange Bowl halftime show, and the Holiday Bowl halftime show. So we have here tonight head coach Candace Spencer, captains Jess Offrey, Caroline Guanci, Liz Roos, and Jessica Yanakopoulos. Who wants to start?
I'm Caroline Guanci. I'm a senior. Favorite part?
Sure.
My favorite part was just going out in states and leaving it all on the floor. And just special shout out to Candace and Alex because they always push us to be our best, and they're like our second mom. So thanks for everything.
I was also gonna I'm Jessica Offrey. I'm a senior. I also want to give a shout out to Candace and Alex because they just push us to be the best at every single practice, and they know our full potential.
I'm Jessica Yanakopoulos. I'm a senior. My favorite part would have to be obviously dancing at Gillette, and also I'd love to give a shout out to our coaches. They're amazing.
I'm Lizzie Roos. I'm a senior, and my favorite part was probably just knowing that like all of our hard work paid off, and just enjoying all of our performances with the team.
I just want to give my 4 captains a shout out. They have been absolutely amazing all season. Most people don't realize dance typically is 5 to 6 days a week. We're constantly in the field house. They work so incredibly hard, and on top of all their hard work and perfecting their technique and their dance moves, they are great at building an amazing culture on the team. where everybody feels supported, everybody feels encouraged, no matter what level they're entering the team on. And that's a true testament to their leadership. They really have created a family atmosphere. Couldn't be prouder.
I'd just like to echo a comment from Coach Rafferty, just to thank the community for all the community support. When the cross-country team won their championship, we got a call immediately from the fire department and police station to give them a police escort right down Main Street and see all of our community members, families out there, clapping them on as they entered town. And then they did the same thing for the football team. It was really just awesome. It's really a true community and a great place to be an athletic director and be a student athlete and coach.
Well, thank you for all that you do, and thank you to the coaches, and thank you to the players. You've really made our entire town so proud this season. And for the dance team, it's not over because we're going to get to see you on TV at the Orange Bowl halftime show and the Holiday Bowl halftime show. So we'll get to see you in January. But do any of my colleagues want to say anything? Counselor Tynes?
No, I just want to sort of echo that and to say, it's been wonderful these last few weeks to have so many reasons for our town to come together. And, when I think about the community pride that really was demonstrated, with the cross-country team, the dance team, and the football team, celebrating these milestones, it really has been incredible. So thank you guys for everything that you've done to represent Wakefield and, again, to give us a reason to celebrate. I will also say, as the parent of up-and-coming runners and dancers, really super excited about the cross-country team and the dance team, and look forward to sending a couple of new recruits your way in the next few years. But no, great job to everyone, and thank you again to the coaches for being not only great coaches, but also good mentors and great examples for the students that we have here in Wakefield.
Counselor Dabrowski?
First off, congratulations, everyone. I noticed we have a lot of seniors here tonight, and so you guys have set a really high bar for everyone from like first years all the way through. So thank you for your commitment. I know that it is a commitment. You're talking about 5 to 6 days a week. I think it's probably the case for I imagine all of your teams, and it's a lot. And you represented us incredibly well. And you left it on the field or on the floors or out on the trail as the case may be. So thank you all for doing that. And you're all going to be missed. So good luck. I hope this positions all of you very well for college now with with this as a bit of your resume and application builder. But congratulations. We're all very proud.
Steve, you did not bring our trophy.
I know. Well,
the town council is actually placed in bowling. We actually have a
third place,
almost a trophy, which we did not get a police escort for that, but maybe next year. But anyway, thank you so much. We wish you all the best, and thank you for making the time to come in. We get to celebrate you for the rest of the season, so thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
It's a great way to be a warrior, guys. Great
Yes.
day to be
Great
a
day
warrior.
to be a warrior.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Ed.
Thanks, Thanks, Perry.
You can leave the trophies here.
We'll just put bowling on it or dodgeball.
Or dodgeball. And I do want to thank Counselor Chines for that idea, and Steve, thank you for making it happen. But wanted to celebrate everyone's, the entire town's victories, and thank all those students. Okay, moving on. Item 4, public engagement. Sherry, is there anyone for public engagement?
Hi, Madam Chair. No, there was nobody tonight for public engagement.
Oh, there are people in the studio. Okay, great. Thank you. Are there people for public participation in the studio? Would you mind coming up, please? Apologies, as we are still getting used to this hybrid world. So, yeah, seeing people in studio, which we love. Welcome. If you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and giving your address, and then please keep your remarks to 3 minutes, if you can.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm not going to be nearly as exciting as the football team. My name is John Chrisley. I live at 19 Humphrey Street.
I come tonight to talk about the North Ave redesign project. I'm the co-chair of the Safe Streets Working Group here in Wakefield. Safe Streets was formed about 3 years ago with the goal of building support for safer road conditions for pedestrians and cyclists. I want to express my gratitude tonight to Julie Smith Galvin for all her dedication to being the other co-chair in our group and for making a lot of time to dedicate to the group. So tonight we've been working with Bill Renault, the town engineer, and Aaron Kokinda, the community development director, on the town-wide bicycle and pedestrian plan. And I appreciate the cooperation that both Bill and Aaron have demonstrated in working with us. My wife and I have lived in Wakefield for 22 years. We have 2 kids that have gone through the Wakefield public school system. And one of the things as a parent that got me motivated to get organized with this group is that, I wouldn't feel safe riding to the high school from my house in Greenwood. And I can't really ask my daughter to go out there either and ride her bike to the high school. But tonight I want to focus specifically on the North Ave redesign project that's before the council. And I just wanted to make 4 comments, which I think is real critical components of the proposed redesign. The first is the new wider sidewalks for pedestrians, largely walkers, small children, and parents with young kids on the lake side of North Ave will be a major improvement. We've also discussed with Bill about putting in these rapid flashing beacons at pedestrian crossings for added pedestrian safety. The second component of the North Ave redesign is a 5 to 6 foot wide bike lane going northbound on North Ave. I am a frequent cyclist around town. I get my daily brain feed by riding around the lake 2 or 3 times as much as I can. And many times I know that there's a lot of heavy car and truck traffic on North Ave, and a bike lane would add to a lot of safety, particularly on that clockwise loop going around the lake. The last 2 points I want to make is, in a lot of our discussions, I know with Wakefield officials and other community members, they talk about connecting the lake and downtown, and I really can't think of a better project to help connect the lake and downtown than this North Ave redesign. And the North Ave redesign, the last thing I wanted to comment on is really part of a lake loop. In our comments about the town-wide bike and ped plan, we propose connecting a whole concentric clockwise loop going around the lake. And I know the Cabot and Forbes development, one of the things we've discussed is a one-way bike lane and a wider sidewalk going around the north side of the lake. So the project before the council tonight would be one more connection on North Ave and then the north side of the lake. And I know there are plans for the Route 129 Main Street side of the lake. So this is one great step forward. Our group supports the option that Bill Renault and his very helpful team have put together. And I just wanted to thank the council for their time tonight.
Thank you, John. Bill Spalding, 42 Gould Street. I sit on the planning board, but I'm not speaking for the planning board. I'm also part of the Safe Streets Working Group and here for support. Everything that John said, I'd love for the town council to really take it to heart when you review it later this evening about how important it is for the economic development around our lake, the safe passage for cyclists, pedestrians. I mean, our goal as a group is really number 1 for safe routes to school, but this is like such a big deal for us. I'm on my bike just about every day. I didn't bike today because the streets were horrible, but for looping around the lake and having that painted barrier between cyclists and then a physical barrier between anybody else who's pushing a stroller, whatever they're doing. I would also like the town council to really review any type of physical barrier that can go between. And I know this was part of the comments from Mr. Renault, but trying to figure out how do we get a physical barrier? Because I believe the physical barrier is the difference that will get many people. John and I are still going to go out there and bike, but it will get more people out there that aren't as comfortable riding next to traffic. So I really urge the council to consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other members of the community? Hello, sir. State your name and your address, and then 3 minutes.
I'm Dan Kretschmer, 110 East Emerson Street in Melrose. And first, let me congratulate your athletic success. Your AD, Brendan, was on the wrestling team at Melrose with my son back in the day. So we've got some pride in your success as well. But congratulations, it was fantastic. I'm a retired transportation planner and chair of the Melrose Pedestrian Bicyclist Committee. Also a cyclist who travels through Wakefield frequently. Our Ped Bike Committee has worked closely over the past several years with the Wakefield Safe Streets Group on both general policy questions and specific project proposals in both towns. We believe that given the proximity and ties between our communities, any change to the transportation system in one community will impact users in both. I'm in support of the proposed changes to North Avenue between Veterans Field and Lake Quinnipiac Parkway. As John and Bill said, they will provide improved pedestrian bicyclist facilities, and they've described the improvements already, so I won't go through that. Also, to echo the fact that this is one piece of a larger loop around the lake that is more attractive and safer for pedestrians and cyclists of all ages and abilities. The lake loop is an important recreational facility that serves not only Wakefield, but attracts people from surrounding communities as well. At busy times, there's inadequate space to safely accommodate pedestrians, runners, and bicyclists. Speeding traffic and a lack of crosswalks also contribute to the problem. Overall, the proposed design will make the roadway safer for everybody. I'd also like to note that as a cyclist who often rides through Wakefield on the way to other points, North Avenue is a key link in an emerging network of multi-use facilities that include the Wakefield Infield Trail, the Tri-Community Trail in Stoneham, and the proposed Mystic Highlands Greenway connecting Malden, Melrose, Wakefield, Stoneham, and Reading. These facilities need the type of improvements proposed here to achieve their full potential. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Juliana Spalding, 42 Gould Street. I live in Wakefield. Thank you, John. I'm a representative from the Youth Council and to the Safe Streets Working Group. I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. I think that what we're proposing for improvements to just biking and walking around the lake would really, it would just get more people out on the lake and it'd make people feel so much safer. It improved the, like, I don't know, it'd just make people happier, I feel. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Maureen Nelson. I live at 100 Nahan Street. I am new-ish to Wakefield. I've only lived here about 6 years. I was a biker. Because of an injury, I don't really bike anymore. But the lake is, for me, I've always lived in cities. The lake is just great. I've never lived in a place that has such a beautiful lake. You could walk around it. Biking as it is now, right on North Ave, in my opinion, could be a tad dangerous. I'm very happy about the plan that Bill Renault and John have worked, well, Bill mainly because he's a town engineer, and John has made his comments on behalf of the Safe Street Working Group. I think it's a good plan. I know they've tweaked it a little bit. My only concern, and it mainly relates to younger people, children, let me rephrase that, families with children. Without some sort of barrier, would families with little children feel comfortable, feel safe on an unbarriered, where you have North Ave right there without some kind of stoppage? That's probably not the right word, but that's, other than that, I think, as John said, from what I gather, we're looking at I think a 6-foot bike lane, 5 to 6. I actually got out my tape measure the other day in my living room and said, "Oh, what does 6 feet look like?" I'm like, "Oh, that looks pretty good." So, like I said, my main concern is the barrier issue and the lack thereof, and I think that's something that the town council should look into some more, and along with town officials. Thank you.
think that's all of our comments, so I'll thank you again and turn it over to you.
Thank you very much. During public comment, we don't usually have a back and forth, but the North Ave sidewalks, crosswalks is later on the agenda, so we will be addressing that. And I do want to thank the youth council member for offering her comments. We've got great students in this town. I'm just going to keep on repeating that. Steve, did you have something to
I was
say?
going to say, if you wanted to, Madam Chair, you could certainly move that item up on the agenda, because there's no public hearing in front of it. But it's up to you.
It's very close.
Okay.
So let's keep with the agenda. So item 5, liquor license, vote anticipated. Are you Attorney John Moradian?
No, Chair, he's joining us on Zoom, so he should be on the screen in a moment. Yep, there he is. Hi, John. Can you hear us?
Hi, can you hear me okay? Attorney John Moradian?
Yeah.
Okay, good evening. I'm here on behalf of Prachi Corporation, doing business as McDonald's Liquors over at 13 Water Street, and we're seeking a change of manager from Narendra Kumar Patel to Rakesh Patel. I believe Rakesh is on the call as well.
Yes. Yeah, he should be coming over too. Yeah.
And just to clarify, as Sherry's doing this, a change of manager application does not involve a public hearing. This
Correct.
is just a vote, so just we'll meet the applicant and then take a vote.
Rakesh, you're on mute and you don't have your video up. Can you fix that?
Yeah, I'm here, John.
Yep.
So it's basically a change of manager. Rakesh is experienced in alcohol sales, and he's tip certified. He will be working at the store 30 to 40 hours a week. The reason for this change is Narendra Kumar, the current manager of record, is moving out of state, so we need to change the manager here. Rocky is well experienced in retail sales, alcohol tips trained. So any questions that the board may have for us, we'll welcome those.
And Madam Clerk, all the paperwork's been submitted?
Yes, it has.
Great. Any questions from my colleagues? Councilor Dombrowski?
Can I just ask, since I have you, it's not on point specific to your changing manager, but instead just, I guess, a role to manager, just the aesthetics of McDonald's Liquors on the outside. It's probably one of several businesses around town that has probably some of the most advertising plastered all over the windows all the time. And so from an aesthetic or a curb appeal standpoint, it's not really there. And I'm not saying you're the only ones. You're certainly not. But is there anything that you would consider doing to try to improve that facade or that curb appeal, so as to not have it so that we see Budweiser's $12.99 for a 12-pack every time we're rounding that corner? And that might be a good price too, by the way. So.
So Rakesh is asking if you'll take down some of the advertising signs in the windows.
Yeah, I can take it. So if you want me to take it out?
I think it'd be a couple of reasons. I think one, I think it's also sending the wrong message to our youth. We had all these students here tonight, and this, it's the windows are almost like a billboard of like every kind of alcohol you could imagine, and the pricing on it, which seems to be a little bit much. And I think also from a safety perspective too, being able to see into the business, I think it's probably not a bad thing either. And you're not the only business, so I'm not trying to single you out. But since you're here tonight, I do think that if you're able to set an example, since it's in the square, if there's a way that we could do that so that it's more aesthetically pleasing, I do think it also elevates the perception of the business too by doing that.
Yeah, I can take it out, the sign soon. Yeah.
All right, that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's no problem. Yeah.
Thanks.
Any other questions or concerns? Okay, do I?
Just agree with my counselor
Okay.
on that point, so.
Do we have a motion?
Move to approve the change of manager application for Prachi Corporation, DBA McDonald's Liquors, as presented.
Second. Great. Any discussion? All in.
Just a clarification. I mean, I think, Councilor Dombrowski's points, while I think, many of us may agree with that, I just want to be clear to the attorney. I mean, that is not a condition of the approval. That is a request, I think, just in terms of thinking of the business. So just so that we've got clarity on what it is that we're approving here.
It is a request, not conditional, but supported by lots of people on the council.
Understood.
Yes, great. Thank you, attorney. All in favor? Aye, that is unanimous, 7-0. Thank you very much. Good luck.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
Item 6, tax policy presentation. Councillor Chines.
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. So this is a follow-up on our agenda item 2 weeks ago when the draft policy was presented to the council and we had a robust discussion on it. As folks may remember, following that discussion, we kind of gave people some homework to reach out to Town Administrator Mayo with any questions, suggestions, or revisions we may want to consider. And so the updated draft policy before you today does actually include a revision. Specifically, the last 2 sentences of the policy speak to, in a little bit more detail, how this policy may be considered for revision going forward. So as people may remember, if you look at our fiscal policies in general, there is a process that's laid out to revise the financial policies in total. Because though the tax levy is set by the town council, there's a different process that we laid out here that says basically that any revision to this policy would be within the sole discretion of the town council and would be something that we could take up at any time. Beyond that, the policy is basically what was presented 2 weeks ago. And so to move that forward, Madam Chair, I would make a motion to approve the amended policy as presented today in the draft dated December 7, 2022.
Second. Second, great. And any discussion? Councillor Dombrowski.
I would just renew my position relative to this. I appreciate the work, Councilor Chance, that you did relative to this. I know you've been working on this for months. I just inherently don't believe that we should be having 2.5% as the starting point. And I understand that there are conditions that would make that not be the case. But I think that it's baked in that you're going to have 2.5% unless and until X, Y, and Z may happen. And I think that's the wrong message to send. I do think we can take it on a case-by-case basis, year by year, considering a number of different factors that may weigh into that. So for that reason, I'm voting against it. But I appreciate your work. Thank you.
Councillor McLean.
As I stated a couple of weeks ago in my conversations with Councillor Chines, going back, I think, a couple of months when this was originally proposed, I'm not supportive of it. Perhaps I come from a little bit different position on it than Councillor Dombrowski. The 5 to 15% reserves in the policies that were formulated in 2013 were aspirational. And as noted in the paper, and I think Steve had indicated last meeting that at one point the town council increased by 2 1/8. The item actually lists, if they're correct, I assume they did some research, that for 5 to 6 years, including 2016 when it was a 1.5% increase, we did not tax to the full 2.5 as a town council. Councilor Dombrowski and I agree, I think, that this should be a year-to-year basis. I think that, adding some language that we can, if we wish, change a policy at any time isn't really an addition because we all knew that to begin with. I do think this is a major change. I think it locks in that 10% number pretty much. I think at least for the 2 years that I'll be remaining on the council, I will predict that this new policy will cause us to tax to the full extent of 2.5 and new growth, and probably and possibly for many years after that. For that reason, I don't support it. I haven't supported it. I've been consistent in not supporting it. I don't think it's even necessary. these 2016 onward changes that were made by prior town councils, they were right after these policies were created. Right after the aspiration was to go to 5 to 15%, and the town did not collapse. So to me, all that's happening here is we're locking in to me, it's an absolute. We are going to tax to 2.5 plus new growth under this change in the policy. I'd rather have the flexibility that all town councils have had prior to this date to be able to analyze this on a year-by-year basis. So for that reason, I don't support it.
Anyone else want to speak before Councillor Dennehy?
I'm actually going to support this, and the reason is that I think it's fiscally responsible planning. It allows us to do long-term planning, and I think that we do need to make sure that we as a council are making sure that we have the reserves that we need in case we have a downturn in our economy or something else that's out of our control. If we are there, we don't have to go to 2.5%, and we have a lot of flexibility in terms of what we want in our budgets, and whether or not we have a lot of control over that. So I think that it's a fiscally responsible, allows us long-term planning, and make sure that we are saving for the potential of what could happen. And I know that people will say, well, that's unlikely to happen. What are the chances? But you know what? We don't know. We've seen it happen before, and there's no reason that it won't happen again. There's a lot of things that are out of our control. So I'm supportive of this.
Councillor Chines.
Thank you. I just wanted to respond to a couple of comments that Councillor McLean made. The first is just to be clear that this is not a policy that mandates that we do anything. It provides guidance and guideposts to future councils. And in fact, the policy itself does speak to allowing and considering deviations from the policy based on economic circumstances and other issues. So I don't think we're tying hands for future town councils. I think we're providing some support in what is a complicated decision. The other point that I would make too is that, again, to the extent that we need to look at our reserves policy, I think that that's probably a valid exercise, but I do think that that is a separate discussion. And that's a discussion that, if we do have it, I'd want to have with members of the Finance Committee, particular Dan Sherman, given the work that he does on the financial forecasting every year. I think that's a valid discussion to have. I think it's been a long time since we've looked at that number, and maybe there is an opportunity to shift it. But again, that's really a separate conversation, I think, from this one. If we as a council, in collaboration with our colleagues on the Finance Committee, ultimately do change those goals, I would envision that if this passes, this policy gets modified in form as well. But again, I view that as a little bit of a separate issue from what we're talking about today.
Oh, goodness. Councillor Smith-Galvin.
And then I'll let everybody else go. I just wanted to thank you again for this. I am definitely comfortable and appreciate the addition of the language. I think we all know that it's there, but having it, tied to each policy reminds us, especially newer counselors, you don't always come in and knowing that you can change policies or that you have that flexibility. So I appreciate the flexibility. I really do think we need the long-term planning, and as I think I said 2 weeks ago, the mismatch of timing between budgets and setting tax rates has always been just troublesome to me, and I feel like this just gives us much more, I like your word guidepost. This gives us kind of much more guidance in dealing with that. So I will be voting in favor of this.
Let's just go the way I saw hands. So Councillor Dennehy, Councillor Dombrowski, and then Councillor McLean.
I was just going to say is that I too am, the amount that we have for the reserves, the target amount, I'm happy to discuss this, but I think that this policy is kind of a policy that keeps us in line of making sure that we're being fiscally prudent in long-term planning. Whether that number of what we need in the reserves is right or not right, I'm willing to engage in further conversation around that.
Counselor Dombrowski?
I see this as more than just guidance and guideposts, because what we're really doing, through this policy as you've proposed it, is creating a starting presumption or a precedent that is presumed by the finance committee and the town council to be, and departments and department heads, to be followed, unless and until there's a certain, these certain criteria. But it doesn't really align with a number of real world considerations that could be in effect in a given year. And if inflation were at 12% in 2 years' time, then that's something that, would not be anticipated. And I think that it's a question of allowing future councils to have the same autonomy that we all had coming into this. I don't agree with the fact that this is just providing guidance. I think it's really establishing this precedent and this policy that then I can hear again and again. Because how many times do we hear, well, this is the policy for for reserves, and these are the policies that we have in place, and then we're going to hear the next level it'll be, well, the ratings agencies really like having this policy, so we really need to adhere to it, because if we don't, then we run the risk of perhaps not having our credit rating as high as it is. So I don't see this as long-term planning. I think long-term planning is perhaps looking at what we're doing in terms of reserve policy and the like. I see that. I see the wisdom in that. This 2.5%, we are taxing to the max. This is a policy that says we are going to tax you residents as much as the law allows, and I don't agree with that. I think that is a terrible the terrible presumption to have going into a budgeting cycle. And the idea that we're somehow going to, that this creates long-term planning, it doesn't. We deal with budgets on an annual basis, and so every budget season should be reflective of the realities as we find them, both in terms of where we are with our reserves, how we're looking in terms of revenue coming in, but also some real world considerations. I don't think we expected 2 years ago that we were going to be allocating $400,000 plus so people could heat their homes this year. So I think there's a lot of moving pieces here, and that's the beauty of having this dynamic budgeting process every year, because we can make decisions that are reflective of what the community can tolerate. And I think this notion that, I could make just as strong of an argument as to why we should be at 0% starting, unless and until we hit certain factors that then justify us creeping up from there. That's a very different policy approach, but it has similar wisdom to it, right, in terms of being able to set this kind of precedent that is a benchmark or starting point for us. So I just don't agree with it, Councilor Chines. With all due respect, this is not just guidance. This is a policy that if you want to modify it from taxing to the max, then you have the ability to do that. But if you don't do that, then the presumption is we're going to tax you to the max. I don't think that's a good message, and I don't think that's what we should be doing and setting. I don't think we should be setting that for future town councils to come as well.
Thank you, Councilor McLean.
Just a couple of brief responses to Councilor Chine's responses to my comments. It seems to me we're putting the cart before the horse here in one sense, because I'm hearing that some of the language that was I think is in the policies in terms of having a broader look, including the Finance Committee and others, in terms of formulating such a change to a policy. We're ignoring that. We say we might do it later. And in terms of this being fiscally sound, doing what we're doing, to Councilor Danahy's point, if there had been a proposal of some kind of compromise on this, the prior policy said 5.5 to 15. There was a 5.5 floor. If anybody had said to me, well, would you go for 5.5? I might have. But that has not been offered at all. There were some discussions about that between members, and we're getting back the same 10%. Now, if you call 10% 10 million, and you call 5% 5 million, and you say it's prudent to have 10, if you really only need 5 as a reserve, then what you're doing is perpetuating, in my opinion, a $5 million interest-free loan to the town from its taxpayers. That's what I think you're doing. And that's what I think this is going to do. I'm not saying it's fiscally imprudent to have more money. It's always going to be good to have more money and more reserves. It's not a question of having reserves, it's a question of how much. And what we're saying here is, I honestly agree with Councilor Dombrowski on this. We are, and I don't start at zero like Councilor Dombrowski does, because we keep voting, budgets that are in excess of zero. But there's no flexibility to this, in my opinion. This is going to be taxed to the max for the foreseeable future. And I continue to not support it. And there was a methodology in here to do what I'm hearing, which is to have a broader discussion. But I don't get that I don't get that option today. I only have one thing to vote on. So I'll vote against it.
Okay, we had a motion and it was seconded, and good discussion. Everyone in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Five, do I need to do those not
You
in
should do the
favor? I
opposed.
should do all of those opposed? 5-2, the ayes have it. Okay, item,
One comment on that, though.
sure.
Is that I would like to see us, though, look at, I think that Counselor McLean makes a really good point in terms of the amount of the reserve and I agree that it's like kind of, it's more than just us saying, oh, let's change it to this, but I would like to make sure that that does happen.
Yeah, and I think, perhaps once we get through the budget cycle, given that, we need to draw on, obviously, the financial team within Mr. Mayo's shop and I think the finance committee to do that. I think that's absolutely appropriate to do. And I think that's a good exercise. It's been a long time since we've looked at the other sets of the financial policies in total.
Okay, moving on, item 7, sidewalks and crosswalks at North Ave. I think we've got some people. I will say it's been like 2.5 years since we had this many people in studio. It's
been longer than
lovely.
that.
I love it. I absolutely love it.
See how sidewalks bring people out?
I know, sidewalks and bikes, that's,
Yeah, we have no trophies to show. I do have a quick PowerPoint to go through, just to kind of tell you where we are. Do we only have it back here, or am I gonna be able to
No,
see it?
you should be able to see it at that point.
Oh, there we go, that's great.
There you go.
Great, cool. All right, so just a quick little background on North Ave and kind of what's been going on the last few years. So, as I'm sure everyone's aware of, we've had a series of developments that have come through within the area, some completed, some in process, and some approved. Obviously, the biggest one being 200 Quinnipiac. And then we have the 40B that is in the permit track currently. And then some other future projects and some properties that may be developed in the future. One of the things that Public Works started looking at was, first off, was water infrastructure in this whole area. I know it doesn't sound like that would tie into sidewalks, but what we recognized after doing a town-wide study was that there was a need for upgrade of the water mains in this area. And we went after a Mass Works grant in 2021 to fund not only the water main improvements that would be needed to support the development now and in the future, but also $500,000 towards a shared use path on North Ave. So for those of us that don't know what a shared use path is, it essentially is a wider sidewalk that allows for travel for bicycles, for pedestrians, and then for walkers as well, and strollers, all that type of thing. So what we began looking at once we got the funding and we were approved with that grant, we were looking to move forward with the shared use path on the eastern side of the roadway. But we also had a series of developments that had provided developer contributions for sidewalk infills. We also had some areas that we had identified as sidewalk infill locations and were planning as a separate public works project. And we also had, besides that, existing sidewalks that were in some disrepair. So our plan has been all along to come in with a full corridor, vision for this, to include new sidewalks on the western side of the roadway, as well as shared use paths adjacent to the lake. So besides just the developer contributions that we have from the 596 North Ave development, the 598 North Ave development, which is actually in hand today, we also were talking with MBTA as they were starting to look to relocate bus stops. So as part of that conversation, we were able to leverage some other work we were doing in town to have them provide us some infill sidewalk work, as well as some rapid reflecting beacons to be installed over at Wynn Street where they want to move their bus stop to. So cobbling all of that together essentially turns into a full sidewalk and pedestrian plan and bike plan for the North Ave corridor. So looking at kind of how we would propose to do that, we looked at a few different options. We were working with the Safe Streets Working Group as some of the commenters provided earlier. So our initial piece was to come up with essentially a 12-foot wide shared use path. Now this is cross sections if we're looking into town from Reading, so going south. And then you'll see on the left-hand side of the screen in our cross-section one, the top left corner, we were looking at essentially a 12-foot wide sidewalk, and then based on some of the shared, the Safe Streets Group comments, they were asking us to kind of carve off a portion of that as a bike lane. We advanced that design into a second option where we looked at potentially going with the bike lane in the street only, so it'd be easier for us to maintain from a winter maintenance standpoint. And then we further define that in our cross-section 3, where we look to actually provide some buffer, which was asked for by the group. So that's what that stripe lane is, and this is what we called our preferred alternative. As we also were looking at it, we looked at a much wider separated lane where we would have a 7-foot bike lane that was raised and a 10-foot wide sidewalk adjacent to it. We realized that the drainage to make that work would be very cumbersome, because we would have essentially a drain line that would be in the middle of the sidewalk that we would have to keep clean and trying to maintain so the road would drain properly. So we maintained our preferred cross-section being cross-section 3, which would create a new 10-foot wide sidewalk, a 5 to 6 foot wide bike lane, because the right-of-way does change widths as we get through the roadway, so we're saying it's between 5 and 6 feet of width, and then a 2 to 3 foot buffer from the traffic. What we would do is also restripe the lanes to have new 11 to 12 foot lanes, depending on where you are in the roadway, to meet essentially what Mass DOT has their current standards for lane width. So really, we're trying to keep it within the same pavement structure. We're not looking to take any additional land beyond it. This all basically stays from back of sidewalk to back of sidewalk, and we just repurpose everything in between. So what that looks like is, so we're starting the project right at the parking lot for Vets Field. We didn't extend it all the way to Church Street, because we will in the future have some plans to realign that intersection and improve pedestrian access across the train tracks. So we wanted to give us some buffer so we can make that work happen and not have any strained investment. So this shows essentially what you would see if you're driving on the road, where the new hatch line would provide that buffer to a bike lane that would be up against the new widened sidewalk. To delineate that, you would see these green squares that have the bike, the bike markings, and the arrow showing you how it would be. So this won't be one big green painted bike lane, but we'll have this as more of an interval painting. Moving further down the street, this shows at Wynn Street, the intersection there, where we look to have some new rapid flashing beacons that would allow you to cross and signal people crossing away. We also have a bus stop that's shown there with some of the markings, how we would have that. The bus stop would be right after the crosswalk. Moving further down the street, we're requesting the developer for the 40B to fund new rapid flashing beacons there as well. So we have essentially 3 developments that would happen within that same stretch. So we figure that would be a good spot to centralize a crosswalk to get across the street. And then this shows us at the intersection of Quinnipiac Parkway and North Ave. Essentially, the lane markings all stay the same. We're keeping it essentially the same as it is today for the turn lanes to move forward, to go straight across, and then to take the right-hand lane to go down Quinnipiac Parkway. This also dovetails with a developer contribution that we were able to negotiate with Cabot, and Forbes. So there will be a new shared use path and bike lanes that go down Quinnipiac Parkway to provide that one leg of the loop for Lake Quinnipiac. So I know it's a lot of data to throw at you, but I'd be happy to answer any questions on the plan for North Ave.
Joe, did you want to add anything?
I am here tonight totally in support of Bill and the fantastic cross sections that he's put together. So I'm just I'm going to be the color commentator tonight.
That is great. And then
wanted a night away from the kids.
I know.
Gonna watch a bit of the game, maybe. Who knows?
Gonna say, but I didn't
and then Steve, did you want to add anything?
I want to commend Bill and his staff and Joe. They've been very inclusive and they've worked with Safe Streets Group very well, and others, because a lot of people have asked them questions on it. And you can actually see some of this already occurring because you see the telephone poles being moved back.
Yep.
We're out on the street, so some of the work's being done, and I think we're hoping to move ahead in next spring.
Yeah, I mean, if we're supportive here tonight, then we would be looking to move forward with this as a spring project. My group's starting the design now. We have some survey that is getting finalized. We had some other survey that was already done, so part of the sidewalks on the western side are all being designed currently, and then depending on where we land on the shared use path, we'd be moving forward with that design in earnest.
Councillor McLean.
Couple of questions. The bike path we were looking at, is that the raised?
So let me jump back. So if you look between, so cross section 3 is the one that we're proposed. So the bike lane itself would be at grade. So
Okay.
that would be easier to maintain from a winter standpoint. That was the
And would
reason
there be a
behind it.
barrier?
I'm sorry?
Would there be a barrier? I
Well,
heard
so we
barrier
looked at a
was-
barrier. So the barrier that we would recommend would be cross section 4, but the drainage becomes a little difficult to maintain. So our proposal right now would be to have the wider crosshatch to provide that buffer. That was our compromise approach. We've also looked at potentially temporary markers that we could do. So those would be those vertical sticks that you see that have the, sort of like at the train track crossings and that look. Those can be done temporarily. We don't want to make them semi-permanent. They would be essentially a removable, kind of, think of it like a traffic cone type situation
And the sidewalk-
in that little striped
Yeah.
area.
Are the sidewalks concrete?
Sidewalks will be bituminous
Okay.
for funding, just because of the cost.
Does the new redesign of the lanes of traffic, does that take away the turnoffs that you see if you're first coming onto North Ave, you have the kind of the turnoffs for Lakeside Office Park? Will they still be there?
The turnoffs are all going to be there. Yeah, nothing changes with those accesses to people's driveways. They just get a wider driveway apron.
Okay.
So we would be allowing that. And one of our, actually, one of the details that we showed, let me jump forward. Yeah, so that actually is a driveway access that you're seeing right there. That's not a roadway. So that's to get into the Lakeside Office Park corner at the corner of Corner Park Parkway.
So rapidly flashing beacon, I assume that's not, I was wondering whether there might be a pedestrian activated light. an
It
actual light.
is.
Is it a light?
Yeah, so in my pocket slide, we have, so basically what they look like, they're kind of a wig-wag that happens, and then there's a push button on there that actuates it.
Okay, so it actually actuates it. It's not just one of those.
No, you kick it, you
Wait
hit the,
buttons.
yeah, you hit the button and it goes and, yeah.
There's actually a set of these up in front of the Dalbear School right now.
Right.
Okay.
Yep, and there's another set on Main Street in Greenwood, right by the tracks as well, so.
And in terms of the two buildings that have already been built, my understanding is that the town has the money from the
In hand,
developers
yeah, we
on
do,
those.
we do.
Is there any reason why we couldn't start the sidewalks up that way sooner?
We're in the winter, well, it's, to bid the project, it wouldn't be as cost-effective. We'll get a better price by bidding it as one large project. That's,
And that'll be going down to the 40B building and
it
doing
will
all
be,
at
yeah, well,
once?
the 40B building, they're gonna actually install it themselves. So they're gonna do that's the proposal that's currently, at the ZBA, so they would have theirs being built as part of their project.
Yep.
We could look to have it as a developer contribution, so that we can include it as part of this project.
Yep.
So, we're still in negotiations with them on all of that stuff.
But
so.
the first two buildings, the money's in our hands.
Money is in
correct?
hand, yeah.
And how much is that?
Well, we're looking at, I wanna say 35,000, 40,000.
Is that
somewhere in
enough to
range.
sub out the sidewalks for those two buildings?
Pretty close. We're right on that, on the cusp. But as, prices have got a little more expensive with the pandemic and all, but, we're right in the ballpark of.
Very, very supportive of this, supportive of the wider sidewalks too, because sometimes runners such as myself wind up getting pushed into the bike lane because there's just not enough room.
And with the width too, the other good thing is if you have like, your younger riders, bike riders can still be on that shared use path. So it's not the stay off the sidewalk with the bike. It is designed as a shared use path so they can use it as well.
Right. That's all I have. Thank you.
Councillor Dombrowski and then Councillor Tynes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Bill and Joe, for this. I know you put a lot of work into this for a long while. Just so people have some perspective, do you have a sense of say like along the cemetery or maybe even by Lakeside, how wide are the current sidewalks?
Yeah, they neck down to about 6 feet. Some sections are 8. It's variable all the way through. It gets
Yeah.
smaller and smaller as you get closer to the highway.
I guess the better question is, do we have any that are 10 currently?
Yeah, we do. Right by
Directly in front of the light department.
Yeah.
Right across.
Heading
Across, yeah.
north.
Yep.
The choke point is really once you get to those cemeteries, it really starts to kind of bottleneck at that point in time.
So if you're directly across from the light department, that, so people have perspective, that width would be the width, but all consistently all the way down.
Yep.
And then the other thing I was trying to figure out with this, because I've traveled this route a lot with this in mind. How are we making it happen? Is it simply by shrinking the driving lanes? Because we're not taking any.
It's a combination of a bunch, actually. So we're shrinking the driving lanes, but we're also pushing the curb into the roadway as well. So we're doing both. That's how
Okay.
we're making it happen. And then what we do is we repurpose. So across the street, we do have that what do we call it? We call it essentially like a shoulder that 3 or 4 feet or so. That's sort of dead space. So that's what we're using. The only potential impact would be, buses, if they were able to turn off and you could scoot around them to some degree, even though they were overlapping into the lane. So you'd have to essentially stop for that or look to see if you can get around it. That would be the only real difference from a traffic standpoint. So, and obviously that's very infrequent. So, we don't see that as a major issue.
So it's not as if anyone who is living along North Ave has to be concerned about like lawn being taken in any way.
Oh, no. We're staying
Nothing of
within
that
the right
sort.
of way on all of it, yeah. Usually what ends up happening is, as we're constructing, we're right up against the edge. We may have to loam and seed a little bit, but that's about all we're doing, yeah.
And do we have, I know obviously we do like traffic counts, from time to time to get a sense. Do we have any mechanism to know what kind of like cyclist traffic we have, say, compared to runner traffic, to walker traffic? Is there any way that we can measure that? Because my unscientific is walkers primarily, then runners and cyclists, like in terms of
Yeah, I
popularity.
think that's pretty accurate. I would have to look through, I believe it was done as part of the 200 Quinnipiac project. They looked at cyclists and runners as well. So I'd have to go pull that data. But we would expect to see an increase, because again, the goal here, the vision is to get it all the way around the entire lake, right? So that's the goal. You'll have a widened area on Quinnipiac Parkway as well, because part of their project, they're doing sort of the same idea. They're taking the footprint and repurposing everything in between. So you're going to get, essentially from this project and the Cabot and Forest project, 2 legs of the lake path completed, and then we'd be looking at future phases with Main Street and then obviously Church Street, and some of that ties in with Envision and different pieces. So it's all pieces getting put together. They're coming in different times, unfortunately, but yeah. They
Well,
get
as long as they're
staggered.
coming together, ultimately, that,
That's the
and I
goal.
guess just finally, if we're looking at 11 to 12 feet per driving lane, we're obviously shrinking those driving lanes. My first thought is, okay, it seems like that's a net good because it presumably has a traffic calming effect, I would
Correct.
imagine, to some extent.
Exactly, yeah, that's why, if, to get the 11-foot lanes, that'll provide it. 12 feet is typically what you would see for a lane, that's a standard for the most part. 12 to 14, depending on the type of roadway you're in. So 11 is where you start to see it, and that's still recommended by Mass DOT to add, when you're adding bike accommodations, to go down to 11 feet. That is more than acceptable, so.
And then the flip side of that is I'm thinking as a motorist, if I'm driving in those more narrow roadways, especially if we have, like heavy snowfall and things like that. Obviously DPW does a great job of clearing, but are there any potential concerns or issues with a more narrowed space in terms of, from a plowing perspective?
No.
Or does this particular design, because the bike lane is level with the road, alleviate some of what otherwise could be an issue?
Consistency in the travel lane will certainly save trips. So some of the streets, North Ave, Elm Street, the way that the width is inconsistent, actually to clear one section versus the other, it takes multiple trips through it. But the biggest blade is about 11 feet, angled to the sides, you're really at like 8.5, 9 by the time you're down. There isn't any issue with any of that as far as that is concerned. We'll have some snow on the shoulders that once the streets are clear, we'll take care of after the fact, but it's business as usual for us.
Yeah, so on the west side, you still have the grass strip, and so that would still get plowed into one row that sits there. One of the reasons that we weren't fans of having the vertical separation from the bike lane is the maintenance component. So what the recommendation would be is to plow into 2 sets of windrows, and that would add a lot of additional maintenance for our, DPW folks. So we're trying to avoid that. That's one of the reasons that we want to have it as one lane that's all at the same level as, as the traffic, so.
So it sounds like this might actually be more efficient or streamlined from a plowing perspective.
As far as getting up on the sidewalks, depending on the route that's selected, but the less vertical obstacle that there is, or barriers, because, the tough part is the barrier that delineates traffic, road traffic, cars from someone that's utilizing the bike lane, also now puts the snow removal part into a little bit of a paradox, because now you have to mount that and fit in between whatever that channel is. And anything that we have that gets up on the sidewalk is anywhere between 40 inches and 8 feet wide. If we have a nice, clear, easy path, we'll run some of the big snow blowers through it, and that thing will look like an airport runway. Depending on what we do with channelized markers or things like that, whatever the council was to recommend might dictate a little bit differently. So, there could be some residuals left over.
Yeah, I think we're looking more at a temporary, so that would be available in the summer. Winter, we would probably not have them out there. They do have semi-permanent ones, like I spoke to before, but what ends up happening is it impacts your pavement structure, so we're trying to avoid that because they don't really have a good, there's not a good example that I've found that I would recommend at this point, so.
Well, again, you
Unless I
guys
can
have done
design
a
one
great,
and make some money.
great job with this, so thank you for this, and I support your recommendation.
Councilor Dombrowski, there is a constituent Maureen who has a measuring tape at some point that if you need to borrow and measure
Yes.
the streets and sidewalks, I'm sure she will lend it to you. So so Councilor Tynes and then Councilor Dennehy.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. I'm really excited to see this start to come together. I have some questions, but I think that this is a great direction to go into. I love the idea of having sidewalks and a shared use path around the road. I also love the idea of having narrower travel lanes, and the traffic calming effect that that'll have, I think, will be pretty significant. I mean, that is a high-speed street.
Yep.
I think as any of us who spend a lot of time there know, and probably have driven a little too fast on it at times, so I applaud the idea of taking the road and, using it more equitably across different modes of transportation. A couple of questions I wanted to ask, and the first was just related to on the west side of the street, as you get up to the north part of North Ave by the auto dealership.
Yep.
It looked like the sidewalk on that side would end basically at the property line between the apartments and the dealership.
Correct.
And so from a crossing standpoint, if folks are kind of on the west side but want to cross to the lake side of the street, the nearest crossing that also has a sidewalk would be kind of doubling back toward Willard. Is that
Yes.
the right way of
Yep.
understanding it?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yep, that's how we have it laid out right now.
Okay. And given that there is a crosswalk kind of further up by the intersection with Quanapowwood, was there any consideration about extending the sidewalk to that crosswalk? Or if not, if
Well,
there
it's-
was and we didn't go in that direction, if you could maybe speak about that a little
Let
bit
me
more.
jump back to it. Oh, where'd I go? There we go. So, yeah, we do, but at the same time, right now, there's a huge gap between it with no sidewalk. So for us to get all the way up to the intersection, we would be adding a significant amount of sidewalk for probably minimal benefit.
Mm-hmm.
We have a business where this ends. That was our intent, was to end it at the last business in town rather than the actual dealership. The thought would be you're probably driving to the dealership
Mm-hmm.
or driving out of the dealership, right? So that was the thought process. Doesn't mean it's necessarily the right decision, but that was the thought process behind it.
And then the bus stop right now basically is where the sidewalk on the west would end. Is
Yeah,
that correct?
and
But is that
right.
intended to stay there, or do we have a
They're
sense
look-
as to what the MBTA is doing?
Yeah, so they're looking to eliminate that one and add it, so there would be a new stop at Wynn Street is where they want to have this, I think they have one there now, so this would just be an elimination. So we're trying to align with their plan as well. And we, like I said, we've been in some negotiation with them to discuss on, providing some enhanced access in other locations in town that we're already paving. So it's minimal cost for us to add in a little bit of additional sidewalk, and then we get them to provide infill for, say, about 400 feet worth of sidewalk for us.
Okay, so if you were taking the bus, say, if you were coming from kind of Quannapowitt Parkway, you'd have to you'd basically walk all the way down the east side of the road, all the way to Wynn Street, and then cross at that point for the bus
And
stop.
we have we have a crossing prior to that, though, so there's also one at Willard, too. So
Okay.
So Willard and Wynn Street would both have rapid flashing beacons, and they both would have crosswalks.
Okay, but our understanding is the bus stop would be all
At
the way
Wynn,
down.
that's
by
where they
Wynn.
want, that's where they'd like it to be.
Well, that's an MBTA issue. We
It
may wanna
is,
talk
yeah,
through.
I
That's
mean, a lot of it was the ridership and
little
all
bit of a
that.
hike.
Yeah.
All right. On the rapid crossing beacons, so you press the button, they flash, but there's, just to be clear, there's no red light for auto traffic?
No, what that does is let you know that somebody's in the crosswalk and wants to cross.
Do we have a sense, and I'm sure that this is sort of studied, but do we have a sense as to the efficacy of like an actual traffic light versus a rapid flashing beacon in terms of, do people actually stop for the rapid flashing beacon? What, do we see that as sort of sufficient from a safety standpoint for pedestrians relative to like a full red light approach?
Yeah, a full red light, I mean, we look at warrants, so that's what it's called in the MUTCD, so the Manual for Uniform Traffic Control Devices. That's the federal document that kind of lays out how traffic should be handled, because what they want to do is make sure that, Massachusetts isn't different from New Hampshire. So as you're driving, you understand how, it works throughout the country. And they have pieces in there that talk about what they call warrants for traffic signals to be installed. There are pedestrian generators, a specific type of pedestrian generation would cause or would meet the warrant to install one. We're not going to be close to that number here, though. We would need a major, large development, something probably on the 200Q size development for that to even come close to that number.
Okay.
So, we would be looking at the rapid beacons are a preferred traffic control device for for mid-block crosswalks, and this is basically the perfect example of where you would want to use them.
I have one near me, right? Melrose, Wakefield Healthcare.
Yep.
There's a rapid beacon.
You
right
do.
there.
Yep. There's another one.
So
There's-
Dolbear's not the only one. We have a
Yep.
couple.
There's a
I
few- mentioned that
that's
one,
the
yeah.
first one that comes to mind every time because
Yeah.
it was the first.
And
Yeah.
there's one further up if you're coming into town. There's a bus stop that's there. MBTA also installed another one up that way.
Yeah.
So, yep.
No, I use it pretty frequently. It actually does work. People, the drivers do notice it. So,
Yeah, the
Yeah.
next phase up is what they call a hawk signal. That's a new thing. So if you've been up by Merrimack College, they have one of those to get across 114.
Okay.
So
And is it just sort of mounted up so it's at
yeah,
certain traffic light height?
you don't see it much, so most folks don't know what to do to it when you get
Yeah.
there. So that's part of it, but it's essentially a yellow and a red light that come together.
Okay.
So and most folks, like I said, don't really know it. There's probably a handful of installations across the state. So.
All right. Just two comments before we close it out. First of all, I do like the idea of having the temporary barrier against the bike lane, and I would advocate strongly for that so that there's something in the warmer months where we're not worrying about snow removal that does create a barrier. I mean, I think it still is a busy road, and if there's a relatively affordable and easy way in which we could create some additional separation, I think that would be terrific. I definitely hear you on the maintenance issue of having a permanent barrier. And so, understand kind of the value of the temporary piece. My other request is just as we look at the current state, I mean, we've got a couple of crosswalks around North Ave that are there but aren't necessarily well marked for cars. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen someone stop at a crosswalk on North Ave in my many years of living here and running around the lake. And so, even if just on a temporary basis, if there was something that we can do, one of the temporary signs kind of in the middle of the road at the crosswalk or something just to signal to drivers that, this is a place where pedestrians will be crossing. I think, that would be helpful in the short term while we're doing all of this great work.
And just to be clear, I think these two crosswalks would be the two in that stretch. So I'm looking to, if there's another one that's there, we're eliminating that. This would be how we want to funnel everyone to the safer crosswalks. That's the goal.
Understood. Well, thank you very much for the work on this. And as I said, in general, I'm very excited to see this moving ahead.
Awesome.
Counselor Dennehy?
Thank you for the presentation, and I have a lot of questions, but I am excited about it. So I just,
Fire away.
so this is all new to me and things that I hear. One is that it's not gonna, with the narrowing of the road, because it's going to be about 6 foot narrower. 'Cause you
It
have
will be.
Going from 17, what's our traveling now? Oh, one isn't what we have.
So currently, we're, I want to say 14 feet, plus then we have wider shoulders.
Okay, wider shoulders.
Wider
Okay.
shoulders. So we're not driving in those areas
Okay,
currently.
okay.
So
So
we're
that's not
basically,
gonna have any effect on traffic?
no, we're repurposing, again, it's about repurposing
Okay.
from the back of sidewalk to the inside. So
Okay.
the traffic should not change,
Okay.
aside from the bus when that's there, and
Yeah.
folks not necessarily being able to get around without crossing the double yellow.
Okay,
We all know
good.
the bus doesn't come as frequently as any of us
No,
want.
no.
Yeah, so.
No, that's good, that's good, and I think the messaging should be too, because people have a misperception, I think, sometimes of like bike lanes is gonna impact traffic and
Okay.
shouldn't, so.
Okay.
The other thing, the visual of the taking a tape measure out, I love that, because I'm like looking this and I'm like, well, that's probably about 5 to 6 feet here to where the carpet is, so
Yep.
that looks like people will be able to pass bikers and stay within the bike lane.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, we have a lane, it was already striped, but not
Yeah.
necessarily wide enough, and the
Right.
markings were a little different, so, I mean, it's pretty close to what's there today.
So if I'm going slow on my bike, somebody who's going fast on their bike can go right around me.
You have enough room to, yes.
You have
That's
enough
the intent,
room.
that's the intent, so that's why the minimum is the 5-foot bike lane to allow that to happen.
Yeah,
So that's why we're providing that extra buffer too.
yeah,
to allow
I
all of
think
that to
that's
be used.
really, I think that's
Yeah.
really important. And I do like the barriers, so I like the barriers a lot. And I agree, I don't think that I would take my family without the barriers. I mean, I have grown children. If I had young children, I wouldn't be taking them.
Right.
I have young children. If I had young children, I don't know if I would be taking them on North Ave without the barriers. But at the same time, if we do barriers, I think it's really important that they are aesthetically pleasing and,
That's gonna be difficult.
Yeah.
For them to be removable, I can tell you that. Yeah.
that's,
But we'll look into it, I can see what I can do, but
yeah.
I don't see them being aesthetically pleasing.
Safety over aesthetics.
I know.
You want people to see them, that's the idea,
Yes.
right? So-
Yeah, no, I know. But, and we can't do permanent.
When we look into permanent, we're gonna have problems with the snow. So what ends up happening is you would create a windrow. If you think about when they plow
Yeah,
snow and they
I
get
know.
up the windrow that's on the side, then you'd be doing the same thing for the bike
Yeah,
lane.
yeah.
And you'd basically pushing it into one long
Yeah.
area of snow that is gonna melt and turn into a block of ice. And
Yeah.
I just think it's a nightmare, and it's gonna eliminate the use of the bike lane
Yeah.
in the winter months, because there's just no way to maintain that.
Yeah, no, I get that. And then the plan is from Vetsfield to Church Street, that'll be phase 2 that will.
Phase 2, well, it'll be a more comprehensive intersection
Yeah.
realignment, I think, at some point. That's what we're looking at. So we've heard a lot of folks that have asked for us to have a safer crossing over the train tracks.
Mm-hmm.
So we haven't really figured out what that means yet. So we're gonna work through that, and we're just trying to make sure that we're stopping at a good place to meld this project back into into the current project.
Okay, great, thank you. And my last thing, since I have Safe Streets, so many people from the Safe Streets Working Group here, I'm just gonna recommend that during Farmers Market, if we could have a police detail between the light department, because I know that a lot of people have said to me that they feel like they park in that lot and that they cross over and that it can be kind of dangerous, so.
Counselor Smith Galvin, and then back to you.
Thank you. And I've seen some of these because thank you for approaching Safe Streets. I want to go back to Jonathan's question on the strip of sidewalk that is not there from that business. Sorry. To so the next slide.
Oh, where am I going?
Yeah.
To this one right here?
Yeah. So do we have the right of way to put a sidewalk from where that green and yellow ends on the lower side?
Absolutely. Yeah, we actually have
All
more
the-
room behind it. So there's the line that's above the yellow. That's
Uh-huh.
actually the right-of-way line.
So I really would like
awfully wide.
us to consider continuing it there. I mean,
We didn't have enough room to continue it. We would have if we had the room.
So we don't have the. So we don't.
We wouldn't have
a
the room
right-of-way.
to be able to get another bike lane in. That's a few
No, no,
feet.
no.
Yeah, but the
On the
sidewalk.
on the sidewalk. I'm not talking.
On the west side.
on the west side.
But the car
Here,
Oh,
wait,
I'm
wait.
sorry. I'm not.
Car
I wasn't
dealerships
following
on
You
your
see my
question.
thing here?
Now I'm.
It's hard
Now
to
I'm.
see.
Now I'm with you.
I always travel with lights.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
follow
to
you.
continue this here to here.
Okay.
I would really like us to look at that. I think there are businesses down Quantapowhat Parkway that people are trying to get to. KinderCare comes to mind. And people, I know the bus is now being moved, so maybe that's not as relevant, and people right now are using, so anybody coming out of at least two of those buildings needing to go towards Quantapowhat Parkway will have to go south, I guess, to cross, to
Yep.
go north to Quantapowhat Parkway. And I just think they're not gonna do that.
Well, I mean, we find this happens all the time. I mean, on most sidewalks that you're putting in, and you're trying to find a location for a crosswalk, we can't have crosswalks where everybody wants
I
them.
completely
Yeah.
understand that.
I see where you're
completely
coming.
understand
I
that.
see your point.
But you already
Yep.
have you already
Yep.
have a crosswalk here, which I do, in also following up on Counselor Chines, I do wanna, I hear that, and I think that, one of our public participation said this is a very short crosswalk, so if we could figure out whether the timing on this one is right. But can we just look into what the cost is on
Yeah.
doing that, on
Yeah,
continuing it? We also have people coming in from Reading.
The geometry is the issue. So, because everyone can get to Quinnipiac Parkway, and it's really that one business. And I've already spoke to them about the game plan for bringing the sidewalks and where we were going to, so they're
Yeah.
aware of it. And then essentially the next building down is going to have the the crosswalk right there. So,
Okay, I'll look at it, maybe,
yeah.
maybe I'm thinking the crosswalk is much further.
Yeah,
It
we
just seems
would-
odd to
yeah.
me to just stop across a sidewalk right there.
Yeah,
Seems odd
we'd
to
be
me.
going right into the middle of that entrance. So that's another piece of it. So, when we looked at it all, it didn't make sense to extend it, but, I mean, we can go offline and
Yeah, and
discuss it if it's
this is the
something
first,
that's.
I thought of it, so maybe we could
I
think
also
about it.
just want to add, it would just be nice for some consideration, as we talk about Wakefield being more walkable and connecting kind of resources, there are people that walk to that market basket
Sure.
and the supermarket, and they walk back. They either take a bus or you see them walking, and so you would like. I understand that the car dealership's there, but I think as we think about people getting from getting their supplies and then walking and kind of not thinking like car focused of those people that maybe get on a bike. Maybe not a bike's a good example for that, but I was thinking I see people walking with their groceries all the time. And so you'd ask them to cross the street to then cross back potentially.
I see that point. Yep.
So just something to consider.
And I do think, I go to that dealership and I will take my car and then I'll walk somewhere from there, either towards
Yeah.
Reading to the coffee or, so it seems to me like a big hole not to put a sidewalk there. So let's think about it.
Okay.
Not surprisingly, I'm completely in favor of the barriers, whatever we can make work. I think beauty's in the eye of the beholder, and I tell you, as a biker, I would much rather have maybe not a beautiful barrier next to me, but life over beauty. And I do love bollards. I do love bollards. And then Councillor Danahy bringing up the farmer's market brings up a good point, and I've mentioned this. I think what's going to happen now is we're going to have no parking there, because one of the real benefits is this is that there will be an actual curb between the sidewalk, and so how many all those cars pull up on the sidewalk and park there, and so this, I think we've decided this will probably be this will be no parking, so we may need to rethink parking, or maybe where the location of the farmer's market is, or enhancement of bike valets, or better crosswalks from other locations. So I think that's going to be an issue that will come in front of us when we
definitely will.
re-permit the farmer's market. But thank you so much.
problem.
This is really, really, really great.
Councillor Dabrowski?
Thanks, Madam Chair. To Councilor Danahy's point, we did add that crosswalk by the light department crossing at the farmer's market. I think it's probably 3 years ago now.
we did that.
So
Yep.
that's something we could easily do, like an RFP to add that as well, right? Because I don't think there's one there currently.
There's not one there now. No.
But that's something we could consider doing
could,
potentially.
yeah.
Because I think that has helped, because that was there were people darting across, North Ave at that point.
No, definitely. Sure.
And I think it kind of just better draws people that way. Having often run between Wakefield and Reading, that is like one area that like the car dealers in like the 128 area is one area that just does feel like dead right now. And it's I understand like you're walking like at the end of like on and off ramps. I get that, because you're walking under 128. But But there is, I mean, if you want to like make your way to Reading, it's probably the most harrowing part of my run if I'm
Yeah.
going that way, because there isn't, it doesn't, it's not inviting to, runners, walkers, cyclists, I guess, as well, too. So anything that we can do, I understand this is maybe not specific to this project, but I think just kind of long-term, because we have allocated all these funds for sidewalks. I'm sure, Steve, you could work with Fidel to throw in some of Reading's cash towards the endeavor.
I'm having breakfast with them Wednesday. I'll
There we
have
go.
them sign something.
But I mean, when you think about like the development of Quantapalo Parkway, and there might be more people going to walking to the Starbucks, wanting to walk to
Yep.
the Staples, to the grocery stores there.
I think thinking about walking, like
Yeah.
I've not run that, but I feel like I've gone to events where I've wanted to go to the Starbucks, and is it easier to get in a car than actually walk just because of safety and,
It's really
whatever.
intimidating because it's
So
not.
yeah, I makes me nervous that you run that.
I think too, well, especially on the if you're thinking if you're going northbound that way, I think it's even harder because I think at one point you go under 128, but then I think you lose the sidewalk and then you have to go.
Yeah, I think it's on the side that we're talking about, but.
Yeah, it's only only on the car dealer
yeah.
side. It's like a one-way,
Yep.
it's one-sided. So whatever we can do relative to that, because I think we have the opportunity.
I'm hearing you loud and clear. We'll figure
Yeah.
out, we'll take a look at it.
That's
And-
awesome.
And, we may have to hit Steve up for a little bit more opera money, but we can definitely make that happen, though.
Right.
Well, we did give you a lot of ARPA money.
You did.
So,
You
and,
were very
and-
busy.
And,
You
ju-
did.
and just
You
to be
did.
clear, this is a priority of all of us, our sidewalks and biking and pedestrian and running. And this presentation was great. I don't want to lose sight of the fact that a pedestrian got hit in this location, and this kind of prompted the discussion. And so I look forward to not waiting a long time before we hear about the solution to Church Street to Vet Street, because I do think that is also another problem area. So I'm looking forward to Joe and you joining us here shortly and hearing about all that. Like, we did make a significant contribution to sidewalks, and so hearing about some of those. But I think you've heard we're all pretty much in support. Yes, we're all in support, and some fellow conversations. And I will just say that I really appreciate the conversations with the state Safe Street Working Group. I think we make the best policy when we kind of get all different voices. So I know it's not the easiest process, but thank you very much.
And we will be back, obviously, for the bike and ped plan soon. That's coming, I believe.
January, I think.
January or
Yep.
so, February, somewhere in that range, yeah, so.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, and I don't think we need a vote,
I
right?
think
This was
you've
just
given them
a,
direction, so I think that's fine.
yeah, that was great. Thank you so much.
Thanks, folks. Have a good night.
Bill, will you give me the clicker? Thank you.
And then moving on, item 8,
never have
fiscal
to ask
year
about it.
2024 financial forecast, and I will pass it to Steve.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know while they're pulling this up, this is kind of our annual kind of review of where I think we are going into next year. And although I maybe know a little bit more now than we knew at the tri-board, and I don't know that much more now than I did at the tri-board, but it's kind of to get everything flowing, and we'll talk about it. And I will say that I always start these presentations in talking about, where we are right now, particularly with the reserves. And I do find the reserves conversation that the council has very interesting, because I have PTSD and I am jaded, and I lived through no reserves 15 years ago. So I come from a different place on that. So Ann remembers, I think Ann was on FinCom at the time. So I do like to start with that, to relook at that and talk about it a little bit. So things really haven't changed, although I think one thing which is good right now is that one good thing about raising interest rates is the fact that stabilization fund, which is looked at handled separately or in a separate pot, is getting a little bit more interest now because interest rates have gone up. So that will help out there. But in any event, we do have 3.2 million in the stabilization fund. We have a sped stabilization fund of about 300,000. We have free cash of 3.4 million. We do have a reserve fund of 400,000. We have an OPEB account of 27 million. And I throw that in there because that is a reserve. That is something that we need to do to keep on a schedule. But it's also the way that OPEB is set up, is that if we had a real problem with our health insurance budget, let's say there was a huge spike some year, we could either choose not to fund OPEB, I wouldn't suggest that out of the gate,
or we could actually dip into OPEB to fund a current year's health insurance bill. Again, not something to suggest, but something that I do, it is in our mind, it's in our bag of tricks, I guess. Water and sewer reserves that well. So as we know, current policy, our current, my comfort zone anyway is at around 10%. We're a little over 7% right now. Not horrible, but just in that area and certainly up for discussion. We talked about the reserves policy before. I don't want to go through it again. We've talked about it a lot, but we are within there right now. So reserves, this was again shared at the tri-board meeting. I am actually a little bit more bullish on this than I think my good friend Dan Sherman is. I think we're going to see these numbers go up a little bit more over the next few fiscal years for a number of reasons that I'll get into going forward. But I do think that we're going to see these increase a little bit quicker than they have. That's just my feeling of what's going on. So we talked a little bit about policy ramifications. And first of all, I do think my feeling is that having policies does hopefully show best practices, that we have policies that are espousing best practices. And I talk a lot about these with my fellow compadres around the state. I think some of the town council members are on committees at the MMA, and these are really going through talking, with the MMA and what is a good policy. I do believe that it provides direction for future policymakers. There will be a change every year. There is a potential change on, people sitting around this table. So this does provide some direction, and I think in each of our policies there is a way to change it. And I will say this, that the policies are something that the bond rating agencies do look at, along with a lot of other things, but they do seem to like our policies, and I do want to remind the council that because of the decisions that have been made by the town council, by the FinCom, by town meeting, is that, we have maintained these bond ratings, and in the last few projects we went out on, we borrowed at a lower rate, which has saved, about $1 million worth of interest, a little over 900,000. I think that's a great justification for these policies, because that's money that would have gone to the banks of Wall Street, and it didn't. So better off in our pocket than anything else. So as we're getting into our budget process, we talk a little bit about our priorities, and we talk about public safety. And I include mental health and substance abuse in there. I think that's a real issue across the world and across the country. And we've done a fabulous job, I believe, of moving forward. Still more to do, but we've kind of put our money where our mouth is on this. Road sidewalks and streetscapes, we just talked about that. Accessibility for all. And a big part of these bus stops that we're talking about, that Bill talked about and Joe, is making them ADA accessible. And that's on the MBTA, and that really helps us in those areas, in the crossings, what have you. Capital improvements always up on it, sustainable economic development, the cleaning up of Lake Quannapowitt, and the council very wisely, in my opinion, put a lot of money into creating better drainage in this areas. That's really going to help clean that up. Education we've talked about, and we talk a lot about affordability and equity. And I think in coming meetings you're going to hear more about housing trusts, and you're going to hear about, and we'll have reports on the heating help that we're getting people. So those are helping people affordability in Wakefield. And I will say, these aren't my priorities. These are priorities that have been mentioned by the council. And if I missed anybody, let me know, or anything, let me know. And they've also been talked about in our visioning process that we've gone through. So why are we really here? I guess we're really here to talk about next fiscal year and where I think we're going. And I will say we do look at, we do look for trends, but we do see that we look at each year as we come. And it took me 6 slides to get here because I'm kind of going through therapy over my PTSD from before. So anyways, I look at what do I do know today? I do know that tax levy for next year could be $86,300,000, and that is considering that if we did include the full 2.5%, which represents about 2.1 million. So it's somewhere between 84.2 and 86.3 when you add that together. And I'll talk about these in as we go forward. I have a feeling that state aid, I'm putting state aid in my forecast at 13.5 million. next year. I'll talk about that at a separate slide. Local receipts, 7.25 million. MGLD, which is the payment in lieu of taxes program, a little over $960,000. Free cash and/or available funds, at this point, I'm looking at around $2 million, which is a big drop from this year, and it may actually be a little bit less, but I'm kind of hoping that'll be less. New growth, 1.7, hoping that we'll finally get some money from the from the pumping station, from electrical station when it becomes operational. And I don't know if there more federal relief coming. I'm certainly not counting on it. There is talk about some federal packages coming through, but I am not counting on any money. But if any came, that would be great. So we also have expenses. I look at expenses. Operating budget. I increased the budgets in my forecast, 3% increase over last year, figuring on wages and figuring on inflation. The delta between fiscal year 22 and 21 and 22 was 4%, and I'm ratcheting that down to 3%. We have given our marching orders to our department heads and told them that they should level fund everything with the exception of contractual obligations unless they come to us to talk about it. So that's where we've started with them. Realizing that things like, gasoline for our cars will be, for our vehicles will be more, electricity to heat the buildings and maybe more, but they'll have to come back and look at that. Articles I've kept pretty flat from last year. Debt service, again, flat from last year. That's paying the bonds on a lot of issues, not including the Galvin School. The Galvin School is separate. That's on a debt exclusion. That's not accounted for here at all. Overlay account, we're keeping that at $600,000, and that is what we keep kind of as additional reserve every year, because not everybody pays all the taxes that they are charged, that people can appeal it, so this can cover that. State and county assessments, I increased that a little bit, figuring that the budget would go up. Cherry sheet offsets, which is really a library, money that comes directly to the library. I'm considering it'll be around $55,000 next year, showing, with the trend. And snow and ice overdraft, at this point it's zero, but it's a long winter left. So it's very easy at this point for me to say we have a balanced budget, because I can just play with those numbers. So today we're equal. There's nothing worse than accounting. But let's see, where do we go from here? So let's look at my budget uncertainties, and there's a list of them. Okay, state aid, I have no idea today. Well, I don't know what state aid will be today, and I'll have a separate slide. We'll talk about that in a second. Local receipts, we don't know how they're going to come in for next year. Health insurance is one of our larger budgets, and it is a very interesting budget to look at. And we've had very good success over the last few years. But it is kind of set through the state, through the GIC. I think the state has a real vested interest in keeping that low. So looking at that. School priorities is going to be an issue when we have our largest union in town. The teachers, Unit A, or the teachers, and their contract is up. We don't know what that's going to go. Snow and ice, again, that is a figure we don't know yet. I have outstanding contracts, or we have outstanding contracts on our side of the ledger, and with police, fire, and supervisors up, they are reading what's in the paper. They are looking at, inflation is high. They'll be looking at the other units, so we'll be, negotiating those. In fact, we've already started that. I'd like to get them done before the budget is over. Tax levy policy, which was just passed here, and again, federal policy, which I don't know at this point, and I'm hoping that maybe we'll get something. So let's talk about some of these uncertainties. State aid. So this fiscal year, state aid was $12 million, a little over, almost $12.5 million. Very good jump from the year before. A lot of that had to do in Chapter 70 education money. I am being a little bit bullish here, and I am hoping for an 8% increase in state aid, and I'm coming up with 13.5 at this point. I will say that state revenues are up over last year. They're, 5.7, almost 6% over benchmark. that the state has anticipated, and we do keep hearing about getting more money under the Student Opportunities Act. So maybe those cobbled together bring us up to 13.5%. What's interesting to me when I look at the state money year to date here is that although they're up 5.7% over benchmark overall, their income is up 8% on income taxes. So that to me is a very sustainable item. I think some of the one-time things aren't as sustainable. So uh, I like this number. I'm hoping it's more. We also don't know what the effect of question one will be. I think it will be limited in 2020 fiscal year 24 because it's just starting. I think fiscal year 25 will see some more money there. So, and looking at the state revenue, I feel good. ARPA funds, do we decide to maybe look at ARPA funds and fund our 2024 capital count in that? I think we can talk about that a little bit as we go forward. Chapter 70 I talked about in question one in later years. Local receipts, one of my favorite discussions, and if you were on the finance committee, as I think, three members of our were, and we have some pretty robust discussions about this. But fiscal year 23, we put in $7 million for that number. Fiscal year 24, we have a policy that says not to increase this by more than 4%. I rounded it to $7,250,000, which is 3.6%, just because it was an easy number to play with. I will tell you, year to date, we are at 2.4 million, which is very, very good. And we'll get another 3 million in excise taxes in the spring. But what other areas that are good is that building fees are almost $1 million at this point, building permit fees. That's really good. That's really well over last year. Last year at this point, building fees received were 280,000. So that's 3x over that, basically. Hotels and meals, $294,000 so far this year, and these are through the month of November. Last year, they were 197. Pre-COVID year, they were 266, so we are getting above pre-COVID there. I think we're seeing that in our restaurants, and so hopefully our hotels and meal tax will continue on that area. So those have been all very good and positive outcomes. So I think we'll definitely exceed the 7 million this year on local receipts, and probably exceed the 7.2 million next year as well if trends continue. Health insurance, I am, and this is one area that I'm going out of it, I'm increasing it by 4% or $550,000. And we have OPEB to smooth if necessary. The GIC is meeting right now. They have not come up with their schedule yet, unless Jonathan knows something I don't. You didn't get it either, being in the industry. But they are meeting, going through it. I don't see any major changes in the GIC as far as carriers are concerned. There have been some merges within it. So sometimes with merges, price goes up. Sometimes merges, price goes down. But we work almost, employee by employee to help them figure out what will save them money and keep their doctors and to keep the hospitals that they want. And hopefully we'll continue this trend. The other thing that's worked very well for us in this, and I talk about it every year, is the opt-out policy. So if you have been here for a year and you can get insurance elsewhere, on your spouse's, presumably, we will pay you a very small amount to opt out, and we save hundreds of thousands dollars a year here. You have to stay off for 6 months, and we pay you monthly, so you can't. It's not like you get a check and you get it back. So that's worked very good. In fact, a number of other communities have asked me for our plan, and they're implementing it because it does make some sense. One of the biggest budgets that we have to deal with is the school department. And, we have to look about what will education look like in 2024. I think we're still struggling with some learning loss issues. We still will have more summer school. Will there be additional funds for the federal government? I don't know. I'm hoping there will be. Special education costs are increasing everywhere. However, if you remember from the fall town meeting, school department did encumber a lot of money to cover some of that. So that's something that we'll be looking at with the finance committee to see, can we smooth that out and not get really hit with an increase in that. So there's a lot of work on the budget side that helps us. One thing that we are really seeing, and we're seeing it with a lot of our, I guess, with a lot of our adults, let alone our young kids, is the social and emotional well-being of these kids. There's a lot of angst, I think, that is still bubbling up on them, and they're just starting to get into it. So that's something that we're very concerned with, adult-wise and the rest of the community, and I know the schools are struggling with it. So that kind of goes back to one of our priorities in the beginning is the mental health of everybody. And Unit A contract, I can't say that enough. That's a lot of issues. That's a lot of money to look at, and it's our largest driver here, so it's something that we have to be aware of. Snow and ice, my prayer is my thought there. But I will say that you talk about looking at that as part of your decision-making matrix, right? It's a little bit better and maybe more efficient to plow the street the way that the DPW director and the engineer were talking about today. Not aesthetically pleasing, maybe people don't understand that, but that does help. And they're doing a lot more, with, the pre-treating helps and things like that. But like anything else, gasoline, diesel fuel has gone up, and it's hard for us to get plow drivers. So there is you see everywhere, we're hiring plow drivers. So that is a runner there, but so I think prayer is really what works the best there. And I will say this, is that the federal government has become much more stingy in giving us money back. We used to really be able to get some good money back on snow and ice. They become a lot more stingy with that over the last few years. But that's interesting. Anyway, we did talk about the property 2.5 discussion. I will say that between 2014 and 2020, all those years, fiscal years in there, we did not go the full 2.5%. I'd love to get back to that if we could, but we did have some higher reserves and some different things. But those are things that we can talk about and look at as we go forward. And I think the policy does help give us direction there and for the council. And thank you, Councilor Chines, for working on that. Federal policy, will there be any more opera funds? Some people are afraid that there'll be a clawback on opera funds. I say we get it all designated pretty quickly so that doesn't happen, but that is a concern out there. I don't hear as much as that as I was a few months ago, but it is still rumbling. We talked about FEMA. I don't know if FEMA is going to change their policy. They haven't been all that helpful in covering a lot of items lately, even things like police and fire overtime due to COVID. They were much better about it in the first year. Second year, they made it a lot harder to get money back in, and that's something that's been really talked about along all the managers here, which is really too bad. And is there more money coming federally? They talk about that, infrastructure and Build Back Better. There's talk about it. I know that the federal government is looking at some, trying to get their budget done for next year right now. So is there an issue with that? So, we keep all that in mind, and could be more money coming in that end. That's it. So I think we're in good shape for the shape we're in today. We will know a lot more at the MMA in beginning of January. Traditionally, that is when we get the first budget, which is the governor's budget, although it's called House 1. I remember years ago, you'd actually hear the speech, and the governor would talk about the budget in the opening session, and then they would all be out in the foyer there in paper copies. So you'd all there'd be like a mass to get a paper copy. Now you may get a ding that, hey, DLS, Division of Local Services, just sent out the cherry sheet, so we're all looking at it. So I will say this, normally when there's a new governor in their first term, the budget process is a little bit later. They're putting their team together, and we get it a little bit later than we do with someone that's been in there for a while. But we'll be looking for signs, right? We'll be looking to see what are they saying. I mean, Governor Baker said that when he was there, whatever the state increased in revenue, his budget would increase that in unrestricted local aid. So you could count on that. In listening to Governor-elect Healy, she has said that cities and towns are important to her, and I hope that that's the case, and that can continue. It's a little bit easier for me to manage, but right now that's where we are. I think that Kevin and I and we look at this from very different ways, and we feel like we're in not too bad shape. right now, but again, we haven't spent any money in the budget yet, so we're always in good shape at this point. So kind of something to think about and get percolating as you spend time over the holidays, and we hit you with the first round of easy budgets in January. So, Madam Chair, I'm ready for any questions you have.
That's great, and I'm going to just ask two clarifying questions. Do we, because I learn something new every time you do this, pilot with gas and light? Is that every year we negotiated that?
Every year, we negotiated, I would say that Finance Committee and Gas and Light negotiated it.
Okay.
Every year, there's a payment in lieu of taxes that, and we do a lot with the Gas and Light Department. We do a great partnership and everything. I always would like to see that number a little higher, and people who are on the FinCom know that I've always lamented that. I'm keeping that same progression that they had before.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I would just think about adding, well, first I would use that where your budget is balanced. Maybe that should become your screensaver. And we should just like visualize that to like on our, what are those vision boards? We should
Yeah.
have that. The other
It's
thing.
always balanced at this time, though.
I think the one other thing that I would add there, I thought it was a great overview of state, kind of, unknowns federal. So I met with Norm Abbott, who works for Congressman Moulton. And I think with that, and I don't know the exact title, I'm looking at Julie, but the energy bill that was passed, there's actually going to be a lot of money coming out of that. And I think, to have someone dedicated looking at the grant proposals, Norm said he would forward on anything that his office got. They're still trying to figure it out.
Right.
But because that's different.
Yeah, the Inflation Reduction Act.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like that's something that as we talk about everything that we're doing to combat climate change and be more environmentally sound, there's potential. And not just, not affecting our budget, but something that potentially we could get some money for some
Well,
stuff.
it certainly can, because you might look at, we have a capital budget. We want to spend, $2.1 million a year on that. And part of that is usually, a number 2 or 3 police cruisers a year. We try to keep our fleet relevant. I will say that, very exciting, I'm just going to share this with you right now, that they are coming out with police cruisers that were designed, electric police cruisers that were really designed much better than they were before. So we're taking a look at that. Perhaps those can come under the energy bill, and we don't have to spend taxpayer dollars
Yeah.
on it. So things
Or-
like that we look at.
Or the solar panels that we
Right.
get earmarks for, right? I think there's a lot that we've actually invested. So I would maybe just add that bullet to that for the future.
Yep.
Councillor McLean.
Couple of questions, Steve. We're almost halfway through fiscal '23 now. Are we a little over, a little under? How are we doing income and expense?
When I ask my town accountant, you know what he tells me?
I do not.
We're 5 months into the budget, and we've spent 5/12 of the budget so far.
Okay.
I would say that not to be cheeky, on the revenue side, we're doing better than we anticipated, as I said. On the spending side, on the expense side, the areas that we have normal problems with, or we usually have usual problems with, fire department overtime, for example, we've had a few people out. That's ratcheted up a little bit, which is normal for this time of year. Energy prices have gone up a little bit because of, because they've gone up, right?
Yes.
But I think overall, we're okay because health insurance has come in well, and overtime overall has been pretty good. So I think we're in a pretty good shape this year at this point. I don't see any glaring areas, let me put it that way.
Okay. New growth, the 1.7, how much of that would be the power line or whatever it was that you were waiting for?
When it was fully brought in, it was always talked about as 1.6 million. So it could be 2.7, normal 1 million in new growth on top
So
of
we
that.
could be a lot more than 1.7.
Could be. It could very well be.
Because we're gonna we'll probably have some Tarrant Lane and some other
Exactly.
projects as well.
Yeah, exactly. It could be
Coming
more.
to
I'm being a
fruition.
little bit
Conservative?
conservative on that one.
Okay. How long have we had the AAA rating? How many years? How many decades?
We were AA2 for a while, or AA1, whatever it is. I would say 10 years, off the top of my head.
And I'm gonna blame those former town councils, because if they hadn't taxed below 2.5, we'd be at 15% reserves today.
Yeah, then you
And I
could
wouldn't
then you
have
could
any-
tax
any
below
issue.
2.5.
But I would point out
Yeah.
that during those years, we managed the AAA rating,
Yeah.
and managed to retain it. What is OPEB? I hear it a lot.
OPEB is, it's an acronym for Other Post-Employment Benefits.
Okay.
And what it is, it's kind of the same philosophy as on your pension, on our pensions. We statutorily need to make sure that we are funding our pension obligation down the road. Okay, so we have a schedule, I think it's 2036, that we will completely paid for our pension obligation down the road.
Including the unfunded pension liability?
Yes.
For pensions in
For
general?
pensions in general, yeah, for town
Interesting.
workers. The same philosophy applies to health insurance, okay? So you need to have a, kind of like a pension reserve, like a health insurance reserve, to cover health insurance for retirees. The philosophy, I guess the thought being, the town shuts down and everyone retires on the same day, but we have contractual obligations to make sure that we pay your pension and pay the town's share of your health insurance going
Well,
forward.
6 million is a lot of money, but that's good, because that is a large unfunded liability, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And it is a liability we're gonna have to pay.
Yes, and we've done very well there on OPEB. We're at around 27 million there. And there may be some wiggle room there over the next few years too, because we've done well.
One more. I see in our fiscal '23 that we had appropriations for expenses, all expenses of about 114.1. And it looks like this year you're prognosticating 111.7. How do we possibly go down?
I think the 114.1, are you looking in?
Yeah, I'm just looking at the town.
Okay, that includes the enterprise accounts, water and
Okay.
sewer, and I'm not including that tonight.
Okay,
Because those
okay.
are self-sustaining.
Okay, great, that's a clarification.
Yeah,
Thank you very
sometimes I
much.
panic when I see that too. Wait a minute, I don't have tax money to cover it.
I don't want to give you any extra
No.
PTSD.
I
mean,
know.
That's not my goal. Okay, and there is a football game, so I'll stop there.
Counselor Dombrowski.
Just quickly, Steve, thank you for the overview as always. Really thoroughly presented and thought through. This whole idea of best practices, and I know that you share best practices with a lot of other communities. And I also know that you work a bit with Dr. Lyons on the school piece. But all these numbers are important, but as to your point, the driver is the school department. Is there any opportunity this budget cycle for either you or Kevin to say work with Dr. Lyons and the business manager, et cetera, in an even more robust way to see if there's opportunity to realize some better best practices? Because I know that's just such a driver of the budget.
You know, there always are opportunities, and we talk every day. I know I talk almost every day with the superintendent, and I know that Kevin does with the business manager as well. So yes, there's synergies, yes, there are. Sometimes there's problems we need to work through, and we're working through some of them now. So absolutely, yes, there is. I mean, when I think about things like playground, small thing, getting playgrounds fixed at the schools, right? Going for grants. In fact, we just got a part of the economic development bill from the state, $150,000 for the Doyle School to make that handicapped accessible. So that was something, what do you need? What can we work together on? This sounds like this will work well, trying to get it from another area. So yes, absolutely. Yeah, we do.
Because I just think, going forward, especially when there's going to be obviously talk of the high school coming up in the coming
Right.
weeks, certainly, I just anticipate that there's going to be such a heavy emphasis and presumably, greater scrutiny on the school department budget and obviously I know we're talking capital with the new potential high school versus just annual budgeting, but I don't know. I feel like you have gotten this down to a science in so many ways, especially within your departments and kind of how you structured things, and there's a level of fairness to what you're doing, but also a reality of the situation. And I'm not suggesting that school department hasn't done that, but it's just such a bigger nut to be cracked. So any of the kind of savings you're talking about that can be realized, I think would have an exponential impact on the town budget.
I'll chat with Kevin to see what other ways we can work with them. We work on insurance together. We work on health insurance. We work on this. But I think that consistency in contracts is something I talk to about them too. But
And
It's
even
a
like-
very
like-
different animal.
I mean, personnel increases, I know how you treat
Yeah.
personnel increases, for
Yeah.
instance, within everyone under your domain. And I think that's important how you're doing that, and just, so any way that we can look at that to try to have some consistency across the board. So if someone's working in town hall, they don't feel like they're perhaps being differently treated than they're working in one of the schools, for instance. And
I get
vice
it.
versa.
Thank you.
And I will say, just to add, I think those ongoing conversations are great, and you've always been collaborative. I think, you've been pretty honest about some of the stuff about payroll, about, we just got $1 million grant that the Board of Health for, counselors in the schools. So I think there is that collaboration, and I think looking at things, but I think always room for improvement, right? Just to
Right.
continue those conversations. Counselor Tynes.
Yeah, thank you. And I think on that topic, I mean, between being a town councilor and serving as the school committee liaison for all of my time here and being on FinCom, I actually do think the schools have a really robust process around budget development. I've always been impressed that they start with kind of their overall vision. They do a great job of getting feedback from teachers, from parents. Obviously, there's the administration perspective as well. They line up their budget priorities against the department mission and their goals for the year, the educational plan. I think it is a really robust process, and I would just encourage anyone who wants to learn more about that to sit in on a school committee meeting, sit in on their meetings with FinCom, because I think there's a lot there that not only does represent practice, but I think also, not only I think can, the school department learn from some of the things Steve, you and Kevin do, but I think vice versa. I think we've got a lot of strengths on both sides, and I have, confidence in the process that they follow and the way that they approach the budget every year.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments for Steve? Okay,
We're at step one in our
we
budget
look
odyssey for next year.
forward to seeing
Step 1
more of the
600.
budget for every other meeting from January to April.
Exactly.
Moving on, item 9, 2023 renewal licenses.
Madam Chair, move to approve the renewal licenses as presented in our packet.
Second.
Great. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. That's 7-0. WCAT, if I could see Sherry again, that would be great. Item 10, appointments. Do I have a motion?
Yes, Madam Chair. Move to advertise for a member of the Human Rights Commission to fill an unexpired term ending April 30, 2023.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. 7-0. Item 11, donations.
Madam Chair, move to accept and expend a gift or gifts in the amount of $895 to the BB Library from various donors with thanks.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? 7-0. Item 12, approval of minutes.
Move to approve the minutes of the November 28th, 2022 Town Council meeting.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? 7-0. Item 14, any matters not anticipated for the agenda?
Do you have announcements?
I skipped announcements. I was sorry. Yes, item 13, announcements. There is a game on, as was mentioned before. Item 13, announcements. Counselor Tynes.
Thank you. I just wanted to start, we lost a couple of, kind of prominent residents of Wakefield in the last couple of weeks, and just wanted to acknowledge a few folks. One is Jim Scott, former member of the Board of Selectmen, and I think for many of us on the council, someone who, we've all had a lot of interactions with over the years. I mean, Jim was a force of nature who was absolutely committed to making Wakefield a better place, whether it was preserving our public spaces like the lake, helping out with youth development in town. And I know personally, I ran into him a lot, at least pre-COVID, when I would pick my kids up at Walton. I'd pick them up on the Elm Street side, and I'd hear his voice coming down the street, "Mr. Chines, I have something to talk to you about." And I always enjoyed talking to him. He always had, again, great advice, or always encouraged me to kind of look at something in a different way or think about an issue that maybe was a little bit under the radar screen, but nonetheless was really important. So I just wanted to acknowledge him and express our condolences to his family. We also lost Joan Chetwynd, who Joan and her late husband Bill, really were just an incredible couple. I mean, talk about models of civility in town, models of kindness. Joan herself, educated, God knows how many generations of kids at Tall Spire over the years, and again, really another pillar of the community and someone who dedicated a lot to Wakefield. So just, again, on behalf of the council, wanted to express our condolences to her family as well. On a completely different topic, just wanted to also highlight, with regard to the Wakefield High School project, we have our next community forum coming up this Thursday, the 15th. That'll be at 7 o'clock here at the high school in the Savings Bank Theater for folks that want to be here live. It also will be on Zoom. As part of that, we will have tours before and after. I believe they're scheduled at 6:15 and 8. So please come join us for that if you're interested. We also are, just from a process standpoint, looking ahead to a vote from the MSBA Board of Directors on whether our project can move forward to the funding stage where it would come in front of town meeting and voters. That meeting is on December 21st, and so we'll be eagerly awaiting the results of that.
Thank you. Councilor McLean.
Just very quickly, I'm not sure how many people are aware of this, but I did notice that the planning board is now opening up some public forum meetings relative to the 40A requirements, and the first meeting might have been tonight. I'm trying to remember.
Tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night. First meeting's tomorrow night. For anyone that's interested, they're gonna have a number of those. That's all.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councilor Dombrowski?
I just wanted to quickly give a plug for Santa's sleigh ride this coming Friday evening. It is going down Main Street from the Americal all the way down to Town Hall. So anyone that's interested in seeing Santa being pulled by several counselors actually in reindeer onesies, I would encourage you to line the streets and be along Main Street. I mean, that's why people come out for this, right? I mean,
Yeah, to see
it's
onesies.
Well, just to be clear, they're not really onesies.
Well, they're so called.
Not like having had 4 babies, not really a onesie.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a questionable name, but nonetheless, for a very good cause, and there, a lot of families are really supported and really helped out during the holidays with that. So please, by all means, and always support the Boys and Girls Club and the food pantry as well, especially this time of year because the need has probably never been greater than it is right now. Certainly. And otherwise, this is the last meeting of the year, so I just wanted to wish everybody a very happy Hanukkah, a very Merry Christmas, and a very Happy New Year. And I look forward to working with my colleagues to get a lot of important work done for the residents of Wakefield come 2023. So thank you.
Councilor Smith-Galvin?
I just wanted to say I watched the WCAT year-end video today when I renewed my membership in WCAT. So people can certainly do that, but it is worth looking at. And just wanted to give a year-end shout out to WCAT for all the great work they do. Watch the video. It is amazing how many people in this community WCAT touches and keeps informed. That's all I have.
Thank you. Sherry, any updates?
No, I'm good, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Tom?
Clearly the most memorable line of the evening belonged to the woman who used a tape measure to see what 6 feet looks like. And it reminded me of one of my favorite New Yorker cartoons where you see one of these signs that you see at an amusement park. You must be this tall to go on this ride. And it said, you must be this tall to claim to be 6 feet in height.
Steve?
The menorah lighting is on Sunday night, Sunday afternoon, late afternoon at 4:30. It is a great event filled with a lot of song and latkes. So, please come down. It's at the Upper Common, Veterans Memorial Park, and it really is a very nice event, and I'm very proud of the council, Wakefield Council, for supporting this every year. So thank you.
Okay, you stole my update.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I think it's a great event that we've done for years. Has been a little tougher to pass in other communities, so glad that we are doing it. To echo Councilor Dombrowski, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year. What a way to end the year, having all of our student athletes and to celebrate them. I will see you in the new year in 2023. With that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Great. All in favor? Aye. Great. Adjourned. Our next meeting is Monday, January 9th. Thank you, WCT.
Thank you.